I wanted to quick talk about discontinuities in rational functions and the difference between an asymptote and a whole. Now, discontinuities are any time that basically we're dividing by zero, any x value that would cause that to happen. So you can see here on this graph, the function is 1 divided by x plus 4 times x minus 4. So if I plugged in a negative 4 here, negative 4 plus 4 would be 0, and I would be dividing by 0. And you can see then we have this asymptote, this spike in our graph at that spot. That's a discontinuity. Here we have x minus 4. If I plugged in 4 for x, I'd have 4 minus 4, and again I would be dividing by 0. So we have this discontinuity. And those are asymptotes. But we have a different thing that happens if we have a common factor in our numerator and denominator. And let me explain, let me show what happens. So let's say that in our numerator, I added an x minus 4. So now you can see that that asymptote at negative 4 remains, but the asymptote at positive 4 is gone. And the reason for that is this now simplifies. X minus 4 divided by x minus 4 is 1. So we can simplify this function to be 1 over x plus 4. And now in that simplified version, only negative 4 would cause the denominator to be 0. So only negative 4 would be our asymptote. And this other thing, this other point is called a whole. Now the whole happens at that 0 that got factored out. So an asymptote, let me just make a note here, our vertical asymptote is at x equals negative 4 because that's what makes the simplified version 0. And our whole occurs at x equals positive 4. It's the one that was simplified out or divided away. So I know I have a whole right here in my graph. Unfortunately, with Desmos, you can't really zoom in enough to see that because it's kind of this little instantaneous spot. The graph doesn't exist, okay? Now, if you were interested in finding out like what y value that was, and sometimes in calculus we are interested in what y value we're approaching there, if we were to take our simplified version and plug in our x value of 4, if we said 1 over the whole value plus 4, so just plugging our x value in, that's the y value. So the whole takes place at 4, 1/8. So when we deal with rational functions, if the question's just, hey, where is it discontinuous? We just look to the denominator and say, well, it's discontinuous at negative 4 and positive 4. Those are our discontinuities. Discontinuity at x equals 4 and negative 4. But we can see because of this common factor in the numerator and denominator that we get a division. Those divide out and leave us with just 1 over x plus 4. So now we can classify those discontinuities. The asymptote is what x value would make the simplified version, still dividing by 0, so negative 4, and the whole is the one that we were able to divide out. And those are the two types of discontinuities we see in our rational functions. If this video helped you, please like and subscribe for more math help.